This presentation focuses on how climate change causes an increase in species decline, and more specifically endangered species. Even with just a 0.8 degree rise in global mean temperature, the effects on ecosystems are not going unnoticed. The current extinction rate is 1,000 to 10,000 times greater than the natural extinction rate, according to the Centre for Biological Diversity. The reason for this broad range is that we don't know the exact number of species on Earth, but it does indicate that at this rate, dozens of species are becoming extinct on a daily basis. The dramatic rise in the rate of extinction can be largely attributed on industrialization, in which predominantly coal and more recently oil have been burnt, along with other fossil fuels that have heavily contributed to the rise in CO2, worsening the greenhouse gas effect. The oceans absorb 90% of the excess heat released into the atmosphere, meaning that the oceans are warming much faster. However, it is now thought that the oceans have actually absorbed far more heat than initially expected, according to Lindell 2019. This increase in ocean temperature causes the oceans to lose its ability to hold oxygen, as warm water carries less dissolved oxygen. With this reduced amount of dissolved oxygen, not only is it killing off various marine organisms, but it is indirectly impacting a change in their growth, behaviour and reproduction. Phytoplankton, one-celled plants that live at the ocean's surface, and algae use photosynthesis for nutrients. As many of you will know, photosynthesis is a process that removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and converts it into organic carbon and oxygen, which feed almost every ecosystem. But according to an article written by Grinder and Molinaro in 2013, this algae and phytoplankton are disappearing due to ocean warming, as the nutrients are no longer easily accessible at the surface. Without these nutrients, phytoplankton and algae cannot provide marine life with the necessary organic carbon and oxygen, resulting in further species decline. Today, 85% of large whales, 87% of sea turtles, and 90% of oysters have all become extinct, along with over half of the world's coral reefs are on the verge of collapse. Statistics produced by Richardson et al. 2012. Having discussed how climate change has caused a decline and an endangerment in species in the oceans, I will now explain how land-based species has been affected by this change in the Earth's climate. It is just as dramatic on land. According to Richardson et al. 2012, 45% of European birds are experiencing population decline. 48% of bird species in the US are of conservation concern, and of 20% of the 5,000 mammal species worldwide are already threatened by extinction. As CO2 continues to rise, an increase in temperature, precipitation and moisture results in more extreme weather, directly affecting land-based species, especially birds. An increasing issue is the loss of many birds' habitat through sea level rise. For example, according to the Worldwide Fund, Europe's Mediterranean coastal wetlands, critical habitat for migratory birds, could be completely destroyed by 2080, with a 1.5 to 4.2 degree Celsius of warming, which is becoming more and more likely as most countries still aren't doing enough to keep below the threshold of a 2 degree rise. Now, when anyone thinks about climate change, polar bears are usually in the back of their mind. Polar bears are a prime example of an endangered species. As more CO2 is emitted into the atmosphere, the greater the temperature. The greater the temperature, the more ice is melted. The more ice is melted means that less of the light radiated from the sun is reflected by the ice. It is instead absorbed by the now ocean, which warms the ocean and that further melts the ice. This creates an exponential increase in ice melt and an extreme loss in the polar bear's habitat. As the Arctic sea ice retreats, polar bears have had to exploit alternative food sources, such as on land, where they have turned to goose eggs, according to Stephen Amstrop, a chief scientist for Polar Bears International. In conclusion, climate change is causing and creating new problems for almost every living organism on the planet, on land or at sea, increasing species decline and applying further stress on endangered species to become extinct. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.